Good morning, Prime. It's a beautiful day. So during the break, I take time as any other do. You go on WhatsApp, check what is happening. Maybe somebody has sent you a good text, engineer. And I find in our boys group, somebody has posted something phenomenal. Yeah. He says, "Good morning, gents. A naked man fears no pickpocket." And he says, "Good day." All right. Now I've been thinking about that, but we'll comment about that later on. Yeah. The issue of the naked king, all that. It's quite interesting, and we have now the fading king. And now the deposed king. I love the king conversations this morning. It's a very kingly discussion. But initially, the discussion we were just having here in regards to the issue of leadership. Democracy vis-a-vis all manner of leadership styles that we've seen, the autocratic nature outside. And Engineer making a very interesting point in regards to the developing world and what we've learned in regards to the leadership that steered different periods of development for these countries. Is democracy it for Africa, for Kenya? And is it something that has worked in countries? Do we have examples that we've seen democratic processes and leadership actually bring the needed change, or it takes that iron fist, as people will call it?
Okay, democracy has worked in many places in the world, even in the third world. That is true. For example, the biggest democracy in the world is India. And India is second tier in terms of first, second, and perhaps third world. But in India, the public participation in electing the leadership, first of all, presumes that the parties themselves, the political parties, have sorted themselves out so that people who get to the top, the hierarchy, top hierarchy of the parties, are worthy of the leadership that they get. And that's why in India, even when they have so many political changes in politics, the country, or in many political leadership, the country still continues to do what it does. It's industrializing, it's competing. Indeed, right now, it's the darling of US. When they want to put any innovative development of products and computer engineers and all that, they go to India. Why? Because India has sorted out mediocrity in their political party system. So for you to get up there, you would have to be good.
Okay.
Our issue is that one can get to be a political party leader by simply pinching 20 million shillings somewhere, registering a party, and if he can do enough PR, he becomes significant. And if he can network very well, he can rise. And eventually, such a fella can even go to the top of our political spectrum.
Okay.
So, until we have sorted ourselves out in the way we develop our leaders, that those systems work so that the very best come to the top, like cream goes to the top in milk.
Okay.
But in our case, anything can go to the top, depending on favor, depending on maneuvers, which could be supported by cartels, and of course vested interests. I sometimes call them invested interests. Yeah.
All right.
So, but that's about the leadership. I wanted to backtrack a little bit on what we were discussing. And the point is, if we are talking about our NADICO report, which would have probably brought the country together, and that it's dividing the leaders, what does that tell us? The leaders represent us. That's the way it should be. if the leaders on one side start disagreeing among themselves on a report which substantively they were appointed to craft, the communication we get is that the interests at the table were not wholesome. That's one. Number two, that projected interests are starting to be different. So it is a balance between what was, what is, and what will be. I like the analogy my friend was using of the king's outgoing, incoming, and current, and all that. So if we want to position ourselves using that report for the future, then the best option is actually to be at cross purposes with it. In this country, it has been demonstrated when you oppose and stand out like the man who I told about charisma earlier on, you get a following. So it can also be a strategy to just get popular using that NADICO report. Why not? If this was to be done substantively to solve the problems of this country, then the table that should have been dealing with this should have been replete with expertise, not politics.
Yes.
So the representation would have been chosen accordingly. For example, you are discussing cost of living, or that was supposed to be discussed. Yes, we had a technical team supporting the politicians. But who are these people that would have come with models for reducing the cost of living? Or even just stemming it? And what were these models? They would have been mentioned. They were not. And yet, it's a sticking point now. And earlier I said, the two sides seem to be failing. Okay, KK has a government, it has cabinet secretaries. I have been waiting for now this is the second year, to hear Azimio announce their shadow cabinet. The shadow cabinet are the ones who, one of them, for example, the one in charge of trade or industry or finance, or whatever docket, is the one who would have been speaking to us on what model that would have been used to reduce the cost of living. Because they keep being challenged every day. What is your alternative? It's not been forthcoming. You can say it's a hidden card, you're just putting it under the table. No. In a growing democracy, the two sides bring those ideas to the table to compete. We will not force KK to implement Azimio manifesto. No. That should not happen. But there are ideas that can come from Azimio that would help implement the KK manifesto.
Okay.
If you have, a proper setup of either side.
Okay.
So for me, I think that until we do the proper architecture of all this, it does not matter how many times we sit down to discuss and write reports. Those reports may be unimplementable. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, reports. Wakili, you're very. I mean, you drew your line very thorough on the ground and saying that is an elite document that I don't want to be associated with because you distance yourself from it. But looking at both sides, because cost of living, honestly speaking, and even this marries to this particular story on the issue of fuel. You've seen the new pump prices. It's on page 4 of the Standard, where petrol actually dropped by 5 shillings to 212 and 36 cents. I don't know when Wakili, when you are young, how much? Okay, I don't know when that was. But
I'm still young.
but yeah. I don't know how much a liter of petrol was going, but now it's at 212. Yeah, diesel has dropped by 2 shillings to 201 shillings and 47 cents, and kerosene is actually at 199 shillings and 5 cents. Now, this has been attributed, this particular drop, to a number of factors. One of the bigger one has been the landed cost. The landed cost went down slightly. We saw almost 16% for super. Diesel also dropped, and at the same time we had those challenges. So with that said, this particular issue, because fuel actually has that ripple effect, on the cost of production and whatnot, and now marrying it with the dialogue, national dialogue that we are having, that we didn't consider the issue of cost of living. It wasn't prioritized in these discussions. From your analysis, where do we sit as Kenyans? Are we left ducks who are just there to be hit by anything, or should we have representation? And even if opposition is bringing out suggestion that this was not catered or addressed, should it be very open? Some of the solutions, as engineer was saying, about interventions that needs to be addressed on the issue of cost of living.
You've said the two sides. I don't know whether you're talking about the two sides, the opposition and the government, or the two sides, the political side, which includes both the opposition and the government, and the rest of us. I don't know which two sides you're talking about, but I think there is a very unholy marriage between the political elite, the political class, that is going to continue in for quite some time, such that we are entrusting the wrong people to negotiate, or rather to address the cost of living on our behalf. When I think of why we are having the prices for the fuel at the level that they are right now, when you factor in the taxation and all those things, one of the things that stands out is that we are following the Bretton Woods institution's script, which is what Argentina is actually implementing right now as we speak, to try and turn around the country. And so for us to expect that the fuel prices would go lower than that, even if the international prices have gone low, even if oil sells at $2
per barrel,
I don't think that's going to happen, because there is a script that we are following, and kind of we are bound to it in a way.
Yes.
And that script does not entertain reduction of taxes. It actually promotes higher taxes. So when you try to understand the leadership that we have, the president, you must understand him from that perspective, that he's reading a script that is written by somebody else. That script is not pro-Wanjiku, has never been pro-Wanjiku. In the times of Moi, it was not pro-Wanjiku. It's not going to be that way. And so the cost will continue as high as possible. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if fuel internationally reduces and our fuel price goes up. I think this 5 bob is to just manage our, we the followers of mom and dad's charismatic leadership. It's just managing our protestation. After we are managed, because next month probably there will be a slight increase, we will raise it not by 5 bob but by 7 bob, because we have a script that we have to follow. And as long as that script remains, then the cost of living will not go down. Okay. So when you now merging this with NADCO, the question would be, what role would NADCO play in having a conversation about foreign capture, so to say? These Bretton Woods institutions are foreign. They're telling us what to do our things. So it seems that as a country, we've moved from what we were told the state capture to foreign capture, or maybe Bretton Woods institution capture. And the political class seems to be okay with that. Okay? And I foresee a situation in the near future where other than the gods conspiring favorably with the current government, because I think the current government is the luckiest government ever, that the 6 years drought just ended when they got into power. Otherwise, if the drought is continuing, we would be in a crisis because people would not even afford food items. Yeah. But going back to that idea that NADCO, in addressing the cost of living, would have to address the role of IMF and World Bank.
Okay.
It has to go concurrently.
Okay.
And the question would be, do you think anyone in that platform has the courage to address what the Bretton Woods institutions are telling us? I don't think, which is a sad situation. But also the question is, would we honestly expect the cost of living to go lower? Being honest with ourselves, with the country the way it is. Would we honestly search ourselves and say that the cost of living will go lower if we do this? I think there is a counterproductive kind of a thing that is happening.
Yes.
You increase taxes, people stop spending. From my own experience, I found it necessary to reduce from a 2.5 liter vehicle to 1,000 cc, and I think next month I'll get a 660 cc vehicle, because Kenyans have learned to adjust accordingly. If you look at the Western Province and Nyanza, when they realize they are never in the government, they adjusted accordingly. They emphasized on education. You go to the Luo Nyanza and the greater Nyanza region, you realize that the people they elect are the most educated. You realize that they value education so much that they don't take it for granted, because it's the only way they get themselves out of poverty. They don't have the same privileges that these other communities have of being in government, of being corrupt or taking the trickle down of what has been stolen through corruption to the rest of the people. So there is that adjustment that we all find ourselves having to adjust to the situations that would happen. And so for me, I think as a country, one of the realities that you'll find in the coming years is people adjusting accordingly.
Okay.
So for us, the Kikuyu community, we are used to living alone, me, my wife, and my children. I wouldn't be surprised for us adopting the Luo model, where the whole clan will move into the house, or the Indian model, where you have this 2-bedroom house that has everybody else, the cousins and the uncles and the aunties living in that. I wouldn't be surprised if people get to that level. Okay. They adjust. And I'm actually seeing that trend where people are starting to just set up any form of a house, shelter. You get a plot for 200 in Juja Farm or somewhere in the interior of Central Province or Eastern Province, Kajiado or wherever. You set up your bat structure and you leave your landlord in peace because you can't afford. So that's the trend I foresee happening.
Okay.
And I don't think the political class would be in a position to address that, or even have the goodwill that she's talking about to address that. It's not going to happen. Okay. As long as the Bretton Woods script keep on being the one that we are reading from.
All right. Nelly, I think Wakili has brought up very interesting pointers on this Bretton Woods situation. I mean, by the time you're going to the Bretton Woods, I think you've explored here and there, and finally you've hit the wall and you're like, okay, these are the lenders of last resort, as they're called. Yeah? But they say, I'm gonna sort you. Yeah? But for me to sort you, I'll give you conditionalities. So are you willing to? And that brings us to the discussion about debt and the way we've been borrowing. I see the current regime, which technically was also the previous regime, talking about, oh, they borrowed too much. There is that element. And it's a hole that we need to get out of. And I think the president has spoken about this issue about paying the price, feeling the pain, but it's the necessary thing if we are to get out of this issue of debt.
Yeah.
From your perspective, first of all, respond to this issue of cost of living in the NADCO context, because it seems to be all over the place. That is one. And two, talk to me about now how, from your angle as somebody who is in opposition, how the government can balance this issue of Bretton Woods. It seems you are cornered.
Yeah. So when you speak of the high cost of living and the way you've brought out the issue of the oil prices, the palm prices, I want to look at it. So you've talked of he's introduced the other way, but I'm also going to speak of another way that the government came and introduced. There's something the Kenya Kwanza regime has recently been big and loud on, the government-to-government deal. So they came up with this deal, the G2G deal with oil prices, in a way to counter at the moment as a country we are having an economic storm, and we seem to be grappling with significant challenges like the depreciating shilling that is going down every day. So the government of the day, or Kenya Kwanza's regime, comes in with the government-to-government oil deal that was to counter the depreciation of the shilling, or rather to counter the dollar exchange rate that was exceedingly going higher. But then, yes, we are talking of a slight reprieve when it comes to the cost of petrol. But come to think of it, you ask yourself, you're reducing by a 5 bob shilling, yet you had increased by 100 plus. So is it really bringing in that much difference? It's a slight reprieve, yes. But the logical question we are asking ourselves is, how much did you add this amount compared to what you're trying to reduce? Yes, it is a reprieve, but then there's also that ripple effect with that. But then come to the point that I'm speaking about, the government-to-government deal. If it was really to counter the higher dollar exchange rate when it comes to the palm prices, why hasn't that happened yet? So this government-to-government deal, that the regime is so big on it, are Kenyans aware of it? Who is this government-to-government? Because ideally I would want to think these are private companies. So the government here is just acting as a broker. Are Kenyans even aware of this? Which government is this that is having a deal with our government? The question of accountability. Kenyans are not aware of that.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's the lack of accountability question that comes in, that they promised to lower this deficit when it comes to palm prices, which they told us this government deal honestly is going to reduce this. But I'm not seeing that really taking effect. Okay. Number two, the other question that you had asked me of how to, if you are like from the opposition's angle, how do we get ourselves out of this? And even bringing in the aspect of debt. Yes, you came in with the argument that you will not borrow, but you were the regime that has exceedingly taken us beyond the debt ceiling. So we cannot even start again talking about revamping or putting again another ceiling, because that won't make sense. You will still go ahead of it. So why, if you ask me, how do we get ourselves out of this? Create an enabling environment for businesses to thrive.
Okay.
You promised 1 million jobs when you're getting to office in your first year. So this is us asking questions. Where are these 1 million jobs? You're telling us you want us to export labor to other countries, but you've not created employment opportunities for you. So does that mean you're not working? You want other countries and other governments to work for you so that you can export labor to them?
Yeah, but
yes.
Nelly, do you think it would have been different if maybe the opposition, the current opposition, won in regards to some of these key issues? Because I find I'm being pushed to that argument of the political class vis-a-vis Kenyans now. Kenyans, bottom line, because this fundamentally, economically looking at it, we are cornered the way I'm seeing this issue. As much as the government itself is exacerbating issues in regards to how it's spending, how it's borrowing, but essentially our huge debt it's a huge concern, and that was the ultimate route that we will go into, sort of some level of SAP structural adjustment program that you talked about back in the 90s, which is cropping back now. So do you think it would have been different? And this difference, I'm not seeing those solutions being fronted sort of to help Kenyans and bring solutions. Okay, briefly.
So my argument to that would be there's a solution to that, because I don't see any problem when it comes to debt personally. You can have a debt, but this debt depends on where is the priority area. What priority programs are you having that this debt is going to counter? If you're talking of us having a debt, yes, it is acceptable, but then again, let us audit this debt that is we are taking. Number two, you're asking me if we would have done differently. Yes, maybe we would have done differently, because if we have to cut the budgets of spending, for me, I'm seeing it as a problem of expenditure when it comes to the debt and even the budget in this country. We have a problem of expenditure. Our problem as a country is the expenditure and the budgeted corruption that I was talking about. So if we are able to maybe cut down on the cost of foreign travel for state officers, why do we need to have foreign travels for these state officers when we at the same time have consular services that are representing the same country in other different avenues or other different countries?
Okay.
So there's the aspect of the question of, for me, I'm seeing it as if we are really to get out of this mess that we are in, then we need to have our priorities put into place. Okay. Cut down the spending, offer tax incentives, offer job opportunities to the youth of Kenyans that you promised.
All right.
Thank you.
Engineer, is this structurally sound, the way we are approaching the economy? That's one. And two, even looking at the Daily Nation, the new expenditure measures that has been highlighted there. The government is implementing now austerity, cutting on travel. These people are the ones who will be flying. Initially, everyone has been flying, apparently. Economically speaking, and marrying it to the issue of cost of living, especially in that NADCO context. Where do you see it? How do you process that?
Okay, wastage of any form is the first place you would go. It's the first port of call. You stop any form of wastage. Anything unnecessary to do, you stop. And I think that has been restated so many times, one doesn't need to talk about it. But that's the smallest bit. There are 4 ways in which you can rejuvenate our economy. The first one is what is always talked about. Stop the wastage. That means just become more efficient in whatever you do. It's the simplest. It's very short term, and it can be done almost immediately. The second one is that you must optimize the things that you do. There are some things that do not have to be done right now. They wait. And there are some things which the government is not good at doing. They should stop and give them to those who can do them better. That's why when I heard about privatization, it was exciting, but of course you need to privatize profitably to government, because you could privatize with huge losses. You can just throw everything away because it's a headache. No, that should be done judiciously so that it actually, supports the government revival initiative, generates reasonable amounts of money from the private sector to to do what government service is supposed to do, while allowing those units to go out there and create the employment she was talking about. Because in the hands of the private sector, some of those things are profitable. Then the third one is innovation. Things that have not been done. We should be seeing a lot of things being done. My colleague here says he's a young man. So the young in this country, his age mates, right now they should be shocking me every single day with something new, which is creating employment and making profit. That's what we should be seeing. And I believe that's what I should have seen from KK, because majority of the people there are young. So innovation, I'm not seeing much of it. And the last one is strategic investment. Right now, we want to industrialize as a country. The place that we should be investing more than anything else, first of all, in the people who will industrialize. Then in the basic machinery that is necessary to start that industry. But people first. If there are any universities that are producing engineers like myself, I'm now an old engineer, there should be some very brilliant young men coming out of the university right now, which people like me should be mentoring into business, because then the new technology that they're coming out with from innovation gives Kenya a head start in the region and perhaps continent and the world. I'm not seeing that. When I hear the KK strategy of pushing housing, health, very good programs, and I really support that.
Yes.
Those programs can only come and be effective against the backdrop of what I've just said. You must get industry going before you can do welfare, before you can provide houses to us. Most people are going to be unable to buy those houses after they have been allocated. I can refer Kenya Kwanza government to simply go and study a country called Spain. 1992 to today, they based their recovery on tourism, like we probably are, and they went into housing as a way of stimulating the economy. 30 years later, from the time the dictator Franco to right now, Spain is still struggling to even get out of the structural adjustment programs that they got into with the Bretton Woods. And I know that a number of people in KK know that.
Yeah. So you're saying the vision is clear right before our eyes. If we look at Spain,
you can go just look at Spain, the way it has done it, and the problems they've had to go through. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
We can cut some corners. There are some things we can fast track. Instead of waiting for 15 years, we do them now.
Yeah, so that's very important.
I forgot to mention the KK model of reducing the distress in the economy. Reduce the population by killing them with mercury, as in having products that are poisoned in the market, and then making them so stressed that they die of natural causes. It reduces the population, and then automatically you have very few mouths to feed. I think that's one of the strategies
I like your satire, dark as it may seem. Yeah.
But the reality is this. For you to get Kenya out of the mess we are, you have to emphasize economy before you deal with the politics. It doesn't matter how hot our politics is, the solution should come from economy. It used to be that politics drove economy, then social development. That was historical, and my lawyer friend here can show us how that worked. But at the moment, it is the economy that drives drives social development, which informs our politics.
Okay.
The order is different.
All right.
So in Kenya, we are doing politics to drive economy and hopefully social development.
Yeah.
That's an old model. It doesn't work. What works right now is economy drives social development.
Yes.
That decides the politics. That's the democracy you're talking about.
Yeah, but in fact, the most recent example that we've seen, because I mean, our politicians are very they study from history, and look at the Kibaki era, because first time Kibaki was very oriented to streamline things. He entered free education. You know, he had interventions that were solving Kenyans' issues. And I don't know whether he sort of neglected the political side, so that by 2007, the political side was totally down compared to economic interventions. And do you think our leadership is looking at that, trying now to balance those two, going hand in hand, and saying, I'll try push the economy at the same time, maintain the political, so that I don't suffer the same predicament as Kibaki had?
I keep on wondering, Kibaki, by the time we were getting to 2007, was the most unpopular person, despite the free education, despite, all those things. I guess the question the political class ask themselves is, what do Kenyans want? Because it seems that we realize that what we wanted after it's long gone, it's like, those people in the dating scene, you dump somebody, you get yourself in entanglement, like some persons.
Yes.
And then later on you realize that what you let go is is what you should have gone with initially. Well, that was the real deal. That's where the issues were.
Yeah.
So I think we have that interesting scenario as a country.
Yes.
But my thinking of the current government, I'm not very fond of governments, including this one. But I think Ruto is at his prime. It's like a lion, a teenage lion or something. You are at your prime. You have all the energy, as we've heard from those who are close to power. This president is energetic. He will hold meetings back to back. He will be at the airport, land, move into a meeting, meet a president or three of them, and then the next minute he's on the next flight to another place and come back, go to a church somewhere. As in, that level of energy is not something that you seen more often in the civil service. Yeah, in the civil service you only see a coat hanging on a seat. So when you look at the kind of a leader we have, maybe we have the right leader in terms of energetic and everything, and maybe what he's doing might move beyond what Kibaki was doing. You look, Kibaki was the laid back kind of, I think, an economist leader, and I don't know whether this is a fair analysis. When we had an economic leader, a leader whose background was economics,
yes,
we excelled economically, also we thought. When we had a political scientist president in former Uhuru, we had one of the most politically stable periods. In terms, there was no opposition. I think his political science genius was able to neutralize the opposition to an extent that politically you would call him a very successful person, not economically.
Yeah.
Now we have is a botanical or a what kind of a background?
A scientist.
I don't know what scientists can do for us.
Can run experiments.
I don't know, but we are yet to find out. 1 year down the line, I don't know what we found out. But we found out that we have an energetic president. And maybe, just maybe, out of that energy, we might have what you are saying, the glories of the Kibaki era, combined with, of course, now the excellent political era of our former president, in terms of not economics, but in terms of being able to manage politics. So we might be having the right person. Might. He's prime, he's energetic. But the question then that would arise from that is, are the rest of the team at par with this leader?
Okay.
Because in as much as it's a charismatic model that we are following right now, if the rest of the team is not pulling their strength, one lion cannot hunt alone. You know, you cannot hunt an elephant alone.
Exactly.
Yeah? You can go for the gazelles and, you know, the smaller animals.
Okay.
But the big animals, it cannot get them. And maybe that's the situation we are finding ourselves into, that this energetic, this performer, I don't know whether he's a performer, but this person who has the capability to perform is having a team that is lethargic to, you know, to performance.
All right.
So we may not get to the glory days of the Kibaki. They may get better. They may get extremely worse than even the previous two periods. That's what I would think.
All right. That's very important. And I see we have how many minutes? We have 2-3 minutes before we close this up. It's been a very passionate discussion. Nelly, the one in politics here, and I know in Janabangi also you once ran for political office, yeah, and they say politicians are all the same, you know. I don't know whether that is true, but now I'm thinking briefly, yeah, in less than a minute. We are crossing over to the year 2024. We've talked about a myriad of issues. I don't know, what do you think will be the biggest issue that will shape the year 2024 from your perspective?
For me, I think it's two things. One, still the high cost of living, because Kenyans are still concerned about that. So until, just like I said, the government of the day, it is their responsibility to ensure that our needs are well taken care of. And one, it is the high cost of living.
Okay.
And this is why Wakili is talking of the government listening to the people.
All right.
So if they cannot come down and stop telling us that they have a plan, this plan they have, they need to leave kidogo and listen to the people. So if they can only listen to the people and sort out their needs, then people won't complain. Otherwise, people are tired of hearing we have plans, we have promises.
Okay.
Yes,
definitely. Cost of living. Engineer.
If I come to that, I want to say this. 1,000 sheep led by a lion can literally eat up 1,000 lions led by sheep. Our present president seems to be a lion. He has sheep behind him. That's mine to say.
Okay.
If he continues to lead as a lion, yes, he can swallow the 1,000 lions with the sheep helping. But if that is not the case, then the alternative is the lion will hunt and get tired, then the sheep will die because they don't eat meat, but they are following a lone lion. And this sheep can be the rest of the Kenyans now.
Okay.
So we could starve.
That's heavy.
The point is this: cost of living. I agree with the president on the fact that that is something that should be sorted out by his government, not the opposition. The opposition can bring ideas on the table. They can bring a model.
Okay.
And they can negotiate that. Because at the moment, that buck lies with the president and his team.
All right.
What I would like to hear, and I hope it's going to happen in 2024, is not another promise that the cost of living will come down.
Okay.
But that the cost of living has come down. We told you that school fees is affordable, for example.
Okay.
That what my young friend here was talking about, going the Indian route for living arrangements.
Yes.
That we can continue living as Kenyans have lived before.
All right.
And we can afford it.
Okay.
And that also, those of us who want to develop and perhaps do business.
Yes.
can do business profitably.
All right.
Yes.
Definitely. I know points normally come when we start closing, yeah? That's when we get very good revelations. But thank you very much, engineer. Wakili, unfortunately, our time is up, all right?
We have another day.
I know we have another day. And talking about ship, yeah? A ship is always safe at shore, but not that's not what it's built for. I'm not saying that now we go out there and suffer from the storms, but also another quote that I've learned: sometimes we laugh by remembering the days we cried, and we cry by remembering the days we laughed. That's life, and that's Kenya. Thank you very much, my wonderful panel, because we have at the far end Chris Wainaina, Wakili. At the center we have Nelly Chepkemoi, Vice Chairperson with KCBO, and Engineer Fred Nabangi. Thank you for making time this morning. We really appreciate it. And thank you very much for joining with us for the last 3 hours. That's been actually, I'm a business. I almost said business prime, but it's morning prime. My name is Nogib Kimoy.